Hello, world, and welcome to this episode of Rush Roundtable, episode number 105. In this episode, we're talking about Rush's greatest misses. So, of course, the opposite of greatest hits. Anything from songs, albums, parts of songs, anything we can think of that was a miss of the band. We're going to be talking about it tonight. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode. Today we're talking greatest misses. So let's just get right to it. What we're going to do is we're going to go around the round table 3 times. We've each chosen 3 of what we deem our greatest misses. We're going to start with Tim, and after each one, we will briefly discuss. So Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, Ryan. So my first one, 2 of the things that I picked for misses were things that would have been in the band's control to have something to do with. The third is just a random thing. They wouldn't have had any control over it. So in September 4th, 1990, Rush, of course, left Mercury Records in the States and went to Atlantic. So Mercury puts this 2 CD set out, 2 cassette, 3 record Chronicles. And I didn't know this until I read this book, Robert Telleri's Merely Players. It says Rush removes Battle Scar and Take Off and replace it with Show Don't Tell to stop Mercury's treatment of the band as has-beens. Now, putting Take Off on there, Take Off's, it's fun, but it's a novelty song and it's just Getty. But I really wish that they'd have kept Battle Scar on there. Battle Scar is a collaboration with Rush and the band Max Webster. Originally appeared on this album, Universal Juveniles. Max Webster were highly regarded by the guys in Rush. They opened for them on various tours, and they never quite broke the market nearly the way that Rush did. They had a few gold and I think 1 platinum album in Canada up here, and their singer and guitar player Kim Mitchell went on to become a fairly well-known rock star in Canada in his own right. Didn't quite crack into the States. And if they'd have put Battle Scar on Chronicles went on to sell 2 million copies in the States. That would have brought Max Webster to a whole other audience. It's half of a Rush song, and I would have liked to have seen it find a home on an actual Rush release, because I think it would have, Rush fans would be curious to hear it. And, they're great buddies with these guys. I think it would have been a little kick for them. And even though they weren't around as an active band, it might have elevated their profile. So that's my first miss. I really think they should have put Battle Scar on Chronicles.
I don't know enough about it, so I'm not gonna comment. Anybody?
That's deep.
Yeah, I just learned something. So
Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna agree with Tim.
Yeah, take his word for it.
I agree. Take his word because it's probably a good song. I'm gonna have to go look it up.
It's a slow, heavy song, and Getty is using his higher, like Caress of Steel voice in 1980 when he wasn't singing like that with Rush. He just belts it out. It's just a killer tune. I can't see any Rush fan listening to that and thinking, wow, that's not very good. But it's the 2 full bands all together, 2 drummers, like 2 guitar players, 2 bass players, 2 singers, and a keyboard player.
Wow. Now that you mention it, actually, I actually remember this. I had something like years ago, but I think my friend showed me that in like the car once, because now it's ringing a bell. One of those, and you said 1980 it was from?
Yeah.
So that's a real gem. Because like we, a lot of us, we know like a lot of stuff from like the early 70s, like, before the Rush album, the debut album, they had like a bunch of like other random songs. But I feel like
there are few other songs out there, and this is a good example of something that was legitimately recorded and came out on an actual record and a record label and is professionally recorded. And, it's a heavy song and it's half Rush. And I wish it had found a home on one of the many Rush compilations, but apparently it was supposed to be on Chronicles and they took it off. And Jerry and Steve dedicated an episode of the Rush cast to that song too.
Really?
All right. So first and foremost, I just want to say that I wore this shirt to this roundtable on purpose. Those that have this shirt will know that this shirt in and of itself is a miss because it has all the album's logos in order except it goes Roll the Bones, Counterparts, Different Stages, Test for Echo, Vapor Trails. They're not in the right order.
Right.
Anyways,
oops.
Yep. Oops.
Although part of Different Stages was recorded before Test for Echo came out.
Maybe that's why. Anyways, I don't want to waste too much time on that. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was funny.
I just like to imagine like a diehard Rush fan like pointing that out and calling you a poser.
All right. So my first one is that there was no part 5 of the Fear trilogy. I think that was a miss. I thought there was an opportunity to continue that on after Freeze. I think Freeze is a really good song. I think it's really cool how they did that many, many years later. And I think they very much could have continued that and had a part 5 of Freeze from Snakes and Arrows. And take any guesses as to what song I'm thinking of?
Could you go with Armor and Sword?
Armor and Sword, yes.
Yeah.
The fear of religion being used against people in a way, kind of similar, I guess, to the weapon, but not, it's more or less like religion being used as a weapon is my interpretation of that song. And I love the song. I love the tune. But I just thought there was an opportunity to continue that onward and kind of just tie that in. I just thought that was, I don't know, maybe that's not necessarily a miss, but it's kind of like you could have kept it ongoing. So that's my number one.
I just have this vision of Brian writing in Sharpie on the back of his Snakes and Arrows, part 5 of Fear.
Yeah. Anyways, all right, Paul, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's a debate amongst drummers. We know that Neil played 4 different brands over the years. Started off with Slingerlands, and moved on to Tamas, and then to Ludwig's, and then finally finished up with DWs. For me personally, it's the sound of the DWs. I can't get my head wrapped around the sound of the toms. It just, in the later years when I listen to the live albums, it's just, I don't know, because I don't know if it just sounds completely different from the original recordings. It sounds so different. It hurts. I don't want to say it hurts my ears, but it just sounds so different. It's not, I don't know. It just never did it for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I got to look at it this way. I mean, Neil, obviously he chose what his sounds were supposed to be like. Like, he purposely went to DW, said, this is what I want. Let's, manufacture drums and to the sound that I want. But I prefer, I mean, there's a big debate on that. I mean, I prefer the Tamas or the Ludwigs, but that's my miss. I think it's towards the end when he was using DW, the sound of it, especially the like the rototoms, the higher pitched toms towards, they just sounded odd to me compared to the previous recordings, the previous drum kits. The cymbals sounded fantastic. You could tell he had them done by Sabian, the Paragon series, but the toms, I just, especially on the R40 tour, for some reason that the what they call it, El Darko, the retro kit that they had on the tour, I didn't like that, the sound of them. They look fantastic, but I couldn't get around the sound. But that's my personal opinion. So
fair enough.
I mean, somebody else might say that the DW sounded the best of all the different brands. I mean, it's really a subject to interpretation, right? So
definitely. And I think, I mean, during the R40 tour, like, you got to think, and this is like really onto it, but like, what songs were like Tom heavy, but honestly, that's something I never really picked up on. Like, I never really paid attention. I think I am going to pay attention to that, like, next time I listen to it, and see what
especially, I find you notice it more when you're listening to older songs during live concert tours, the most recent tours. I find that's where it just, I mean, when you hear Tom Sawyer played in the later tours, you're like, wait a second, that fill doesn't sound exactly the same because it's a different kind of drum. So that's where it like, you didn't hear it right away. I heard it right away. I was like, wait a second, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like the original recording. And I know that Rush, they tried to, when they were on concert, try to, do their songs as close to the originals as they could. And, but that's my miss. One of the misses. But at the end,
Cool.
it's Neil. So, I mean, he can do what he wants. Who am I to say? Right?
Yeah. All right, Pat, go ahead.
All right. So it took a lot of thinking to figure out like what I thought. Well, that's right there. But anyway, a lot of thinking of what real criticism I have, and I actually, two of them are like but one I actually just figured out that like is personal. Faithless. They played that on the Snakes and Arrows tour. They played that on Time Machine.
No.
And then
not on Snakes and Arrows.
It wasn't on Snakes and Arrows?
Just Time Machine.
Yeah, so they played it on Time Machine. And now here comes the Clockwork Angels tour. And they have, all these, they have the ensemble, the string ensemble. And, how Faithless is kind of one of those songs that's like, has the strings in it. And it's like, I feel like it's like a huge part of the song. So I feel like, yeah, I guess it was played up. Like they played it on the previous tour then. But I feel like it really would have worked with that tour. What do you guys think?
So you think it was a missed opportunity that they didn't do Faithless with the string ensemble? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think you could argue that just about anything other than maybe, Far Cry and a few others could have been done with the string ensemble songs from Snakes and Arrows because, it's a very acoustic-y album.
I think there's several songs from their catalog that could have been done with the string ensemble. I think there's several that couldn't have, for sure. But like, I think they sent them off and then did Dreamline on that tour right after they sent the, or no, they did Dreamline with the string ensemble. What song is they did after they sent them off? The Spirit.
I think they did Manhattan Project in there too. I don't know if the string ensemble, that was in the second set, but I don't know if the string ensemble was still on.
But like the song, I think it's The Spirit Radio that they came out with, but that song I don't think that song would have sounded good with like strings.
No. Yeah, that's a good one, Pat. Missed opportunity. Cool. Nick, go ahead.
Okay, so my first one, I was gonna say their recordings early on, but I'll save that for my second one. My first one is I actually think they missed on a lot of their live albums. And I know like we just had an episode about how great like their live albums were and how I always love them, but I'm not talking so much about like I think the recording's great. What I'm talking about is you look at their live albums pre-Vapor Trails tour, they didn't really record a concert. They took snippets and put it on a CD and didn't give you an actual like concert experience. So like prime example is A Show of Hands, where the Laserdisc, the video, the Laserdisc, and the CD all completely different. Like the Laserdisc had Lock and Key on it, whereas the video didn't. But then the album is totally different.
Prime Mover too was one of them.
Yep, there's
Territories is on the video that's not on the
videos. I love that version of Vio Strangiato. I think it sounds awesome on the DVD. That's not on the recording. And Exit Stage Left. I know that we all like to record an album, but I like the DVD better. The DVD's awesome. But again, there's a few missing on that. There's a few missing on the album. And then a prime example I wanted to bring up, and to wrap this point up, Different Stages. Different Stages bothers me because, especially after I saw the Molson Amphitheater show, because this set list, they left off Half the World from the CD. They left off Half the World, Red Barchetta, Limbo, Virtuality. They left off Subdivisions. They left off, let's see, what else? I think
Time
it was
and Motion too, right?
Time and Motion.
Wow.
Yeah, they left. Those were all played. That's 6 songs that were played on that tour that were not put on the CD, and a couple of those weren't even on the DVD. So to me, up until the Vapor Trails tour, they missed out on actually giving you, because like, and I don't know.
Well,
if
there was no DVD for different stages.
No, there wasn't. And
Yeah.
but the CD was incomplete. So I don't know.
Yep.
To conclude, I don't know if it would have helped expand their popularity, but like part of the reason why Kiss got so popular wasn't because they had all these hits. It's because they released all these live albums to get people. They were like, hey, we're a live band. Come see us. And people would hear those live albums like, oh man, that sounds awesome. Well, I'd argue with anybody that Rush is better live than they are recorded. Go see a show. And anyone who's seen a show knows that they're awesome live. So I just think that's a big miss with a lot of those live albums in terms of getting all the songs in and syncing everything.
You know, I didn't even think of that. And Tim, we talked a bit about that on the episode of your show that I came on for. I didn't even think about that for this, but that's a really good one, Nick. Really, good pick. 100% back that. All right.
I wonder how much input did the band have in that though?
That's a good point. I don't know.
It's fair,
right? Like
either way, it's a miss. Yeah. All right, let's go through round 2. Tim, go ahead.
Well, I hope I don't steal this from somebody else. It wouldn't surprise me because we're all, we're kind of all thinking the same thing. And Pat already mentioned about like the pre-debut album recordings. When they put out that deluxe version of the debut back in 2014, so the 40th anniversary edition of it, and it had all the bells and whistles with it. Why didn't they also include their debut single, Not Fade Away, backed with You Can't Fight It? 2, okay, one's a cover, but 2 actually recorded in the studio, same time as the first album, same production values as that first album. Most Rush fans have heard them in some form or another. It would really have been nice to have cleaned up versions of those songs. They belong with that first album. There's no real other reissue where that would work. And it would be nice to have digital versions of them. It's nice to have the CD that has those on them, just because there are so few Rush recordings out there that aren't just live recordings of songs, as much as we love them, that we've heard a million times. And this is not like Garden Road or Fancy Dancer, where you've got a really crappy bootleg recording of one mic, or a tape recorder under somebody's seat. These were professionally recorded songs, and You Can't Fight It is a Lee Lifeson original. And both of those songs would have fit right in if they'd made their first album a 10-track album. I think that was a huge miss. Once I started reading about this reissue of the debut back in 2014, that's got to be in there. If they're including all this other stuff, when I read that it wasn't, I had no interest in buying it whatsoever. I think that was a huge miss, and I think they would have sold quite a few more copies of it if they'd included those, because it was something that we'd never officially had before, unless somebody was rich enough to buy a $1,500 used 45 from somebody.
I couldn't agree more. With you. And on that reissue, they should have done that. They could have also re-recorded Garden Road, since they were playing a snippet of that on the R40 tour. And Ryan, that would have been the perfect opportunity to do a re-recording of Working Man.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And they could
Maybe
have
the
released
50th.
that.
You never know.
They could have released the re-recording of Working Man 2 as the single.
There's a couple songs on the debut album that sort of feel like it's something that Neil wrote with the band. Another one that comes to mind is like Here Again. Obviously things like, Take a Friend and In the Mood and Need Some Love. That's blah. I don't think Neil, those aren't really Neil songs. Maybe Finding My Way a little bit, but I feel like if some of those were recorded with Neil, it would have been the perfect effort. I know we've talked about that in the past. All right. Another really good one. This one kind of piggybacks off my first one, but it's a little bit more kind of out there, because not many people know about this as, probably just your generic fans aren't going to know this, but Where's My Thing has parentheses, Gangster of Boats Trilogy Part 4 in the title, right? I wish that was expanded upon in terms of, and I have an idea what they could have done. Counterparts had an instrumental. Test for Echo had an instrumental. And Snakes and Arrows had 3 instrumentals. Pick one. Probably Malignant Narcissism, but pick one. They could have expanded on that. The Gangster of Boats Trilogy Part 4. Where's Part 1, 2, and 3? It could have been, where's my thing? Leave that thing alone. And then Limbo, you could have just expanded upon that. I think that was a miss not to have kind of capitalized on that. You've got all these part 4s of trilogies and things and songs, and what, like, it is kind of a Rush thing to throw that in there and have it be a guessing game, like just because they're kind of pranksters themselves. But I think it would have been kind of cool to have had an instrumental like series going forward from Roll the Bones. And maybe if they were to have done that, you could have done something with Vapor Trails, because like Peaceable Kingdom was an instrumental at first. But anyways, that's my number.
Ryan, they could have done Part 5 and Part 6.
There you go. And not have had Part 1 and Part 2 and Part 3. Yeah.
But then Snakes and Arrows, you go back 1, 2, and 3. You pull Star Wars and do the prequels.
Exactly.
You know?
There you go. Yeah. With all 3 of them.
By the way, that's a great song to listen to on a boat.
Which one? Where's my thing?
Where's my thing? Gangster Boats Trilogy.
Well, that's my number 2. So Paul, go ahead. Number 2.
This is, I'm not sure how much, I'm sure the band had some say in this over the years, but to me, long fade outs of songs after a while, it's like, really? You couldn't figure out a way to finish the song in a different way? And there's 2 songs that come to mind for me. One is Mystic Rhythms. It's a really long fade out, but if you listen to it right to the end, they actually finish the song. But it's so low. I have it like in my headphones and I have it cranked right to the top to hear it. And number 2, which was disappointing, is Different Strings. Because Alex starts his solo and then it fades out and you're like, where's the rest of the solo? Why are you doing this to me, dude? Like, you know? So I'm thinking for Permanent Waves, it was for the purpose, back in those days, you had to keep it to a certain time constraint per albums, right? So maybe they had time constraints and they had to kind of cut Different Strings a bit. My thought is, well, you've got like a minute of Waves at the end of Natural Science, cut that, and then, you know, make Different Strings a bit longer.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
that's
I
one
don't
of
know
the
if they did
shorter
that,
albums too.
right? So I don't know if they did that on purpose.
shortest.
No, was it on purpose to cut the solo? Because it started out, it's a beautiful solo, and then it fades out, and you're like, oh, come on, right? Because they're just.
What were you saying, Paul?
That's my thing. I don't know. Like some songs fade out, it's fine. I'm okay with it. But there's some that's just like, oh, geez, you know, you could have done something different with this, right? Like,
I agree.
That's my miss.
I hate fade outs on songs to begin with. So period. Like I can't stand when a song just fades. I hate that. Like so. I'm with you, Paul.
It's just, but the funny one is Mystic Rhythms, where they actually do finish the song, but it's so low you can't hear it. So it really makes me wonder why they did that, right? So, and
that's really
don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I think Mystic Rhythms is the last song on the album, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. So I don't know if it's just to do that just to kind of finish off the album with a fade. But it's just this, and we had brought this up last week off camera about this discussion about some songs that just seem like they're long because of the fade out. I mean, is it really necessary? But
yeah, it's something that Jerry and Steve discussed quite a bit when they went through their song discussions on their podcast, fade outs, and how much they dislike them. Yeah. All right, Pat, number 2.
That's funny because that's my other miss too. It has to do with fade outs. But before I get to my songs, I want to just like agree again with Paul. Like the Mystic, like it makes so much sense because that's something I noticed too when I was listening to the album. How Mystic Rhythms, it ends and you got to turn your volume up to 100, and then you got to like, for me, like if I have like it on if I have the song on a shuffle, I got to quickly turn it back down before I get like destroyed. But but like it's that. But you know what else? It's also in between the wheels. if you listen to the end of Between the Wheels, the song ends. It doesn't fade out too. It kind of ends in like a synthy kind of thing that kind of goes out. But so it's like the same thing. And I'm thinking like, I don't know, like, because personally for me, like, I guess I'm the opposite of Nick, like certain fade outs, it like fits sometimes. And that could be like whether like you don't really, it's not a, either they don't know how to end the song on the album or what. But I feel especially for like outro songs, like the fade outs, they kind of work. But in cases where like they don't work is where like they just fade way too quickly and they want to leave you for more. So like you said, different strings. And this goes to my point. I have two songs, Losing It and Red Lenses. I feel like those two songs, especially Losing It fades out right when the violin kicks in. Like at the end of the violin solo at the end, like it comes right in and then the song just fades out. And I feel like it could have gone on like a little longer. But who's to say like they had like, maybe they had a certain time limit, this, that, whatever. But personally, I feel that. And then for Red Lenses, I think that I just feel like it could just go on a little longer too. You kind of hear like Getty singing like a little groovy, thing in the background, and then it kind of just goes away. I would like to hear that a little longer. So that is my miss.
Yeah. Cool.
Makes you wonder what other ad-libbing he was doing on that. Like, think about
Yeah,
Red.
exactly.
And
exactly.
what it was, it probably like just got goofier and goofier because he knew they were going to cut it out. It would be cool to hear the complete version of that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Nick, number 2.
So mine's kind of very like open for interpretation, but and I don't want to, it's not really so much of a miss, but it is a miss. I really feel they missed on some of their hits, meaning songs they picked to be singles released. I also feel the recording quality on several of their songs during the Creole early in their career hurt them. The recorded version of Closer to the Heart to me sounds almost like it was done in 8-bit. Like the guitar just, it's awful. I can't stand the recorded version of Closer to the Heart. I think it's trash. I think that every live version of that song ever made by them was better. Even the one with the Trailer Park Boys was better. And I feel like there were some songs they didn't release as singles that could have been. I think Making Memories. I said this once before. Making Memories, if they would have saved that for the Caress of Steel album, that could have been their one. That could have been their one like mainstream sounding song that would have kept them. Now, granted, I say all this with their hits and also some of their. I'm including this on their marketing and just their marketing, some of their music, like some of the missed opportunities on music videos, because they made some really good music videos too. I just think their marketing and just some of their like the way they attacked going for, not that I would have wanted them to go for popularity because that would have ruined what they were. I'm just saying that I think that their plan of action to grow in terms of popularity could have been done a little better.
And to stemming from that is they chose incorrect songs for singles. Yes, that's kind of what you're saying here.
Yeah, essentially the main thing from that to me is they chose some incorrect songs for singles and they could have done a better job.
Yeah, okay.
At the end, does
I
it
can
come
see
down
that.
to? But does it come down to what the record producers wanted to release, or was it what they wanted to
Yeah,
release?
right.
They're a young band just breaking out the industry, kind of like we want to get, okay, we'll follow your advice, and we know the story.
Yeah, but
about
see, but Paul, I understand what you're saying, but to Nick's point, I mean, like, there are songs later on in their career that were chosen every once in a while I'll see what songs are singles. There are some songs that were chosen as singles that are just like really that was chosen. I don't have anything off the top of my head, but actually the one off the top of my head is Ghost of a Chance on Roll the Bones. I mean, it's a good song, but to me that didn't scream radio play single to me. Like I feel like, Dreamline or Bravado or Roll the Bones or Face Up even could have been, maybe some of them were singles, but like incorrectly choosing some of those songs,
Big,
even later in their
Big
career,
Wheel
where
could
they,
have been a single.
oh yeah, or the Big Wheel. Yeah, actually, that's a really good one. I mean, but some of them that well beyond, 2112 and A Farewell to Kings when they had their freedom, I mean, so
Even New World Man that was a single, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Well,
heard it
like,
on the radio all the time. So
yeah,
that
I
was
mean,
kind of
like,
from the Signals album, it's kind of like, okay, of all the choices you could have made, right?
yeah, I mean, like, they released Test for Echo as a single, but then, like, what was the other song they released from that album as a
Half
single?
the World.
Half the World.
Half the World, which is,
yeah.
don't get me wrong, that's good, but, like, you're telling me that they couldn't have taken a chance on Limbo and that wouldn't have been played all the time on rock radio because it's like it's a rock song, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm thinking even earlier in their career, like, just, I don't know, just some choices there.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's go through last time. Tim, go ahead.
This is a good seg because this one's about a single. So it's one of the great ironies, and there's so many things that make this band unique. But one of the things for me is that of all the success they had in the U.S., I'm speaking strictly in U.S. sales, they had one top 40 single. That, of course, is New World Man.
New World Man. Yeah.
And it did really well. It went all the way to number 21. But if you ask the average person to name one Rush song, they're not going to name New World Man. They're going to say Tom Sawyer. And the miss is a literal miss, is that Tom Sawyer peaked on the Billboard, not on the rock chart, but on the pop chart, peaked at number 44. Was so close to being an actual top 40 single. And back then it was driven by, it wasn't like radio is now. And Donna was on here. She could tell us all about it, but there'd be these powerful radio stations. And if a song almost hit the top 40, that meant that there were a lot of stations around the country playing it, just not enough to drive it that much further. Like if you'd have had 2 or 3 more major big market radio stations playing Tom Sawyer in regular rotation, it would have cracked the top 40. And then it's that weird thing of it being their most popular song, and yet it wasn't a top 40 single. And the fact that they did have a top 40 single is almost irrelevant, because usually if a band has one song they're primarily known for and one album that sells way more than the rest of them, they're one and the same. And in Rush's case, it's not. Their biggest selling album did not include their highest charting single in the States. It's just kind of a shame that Tom Sawyer, Big Money came close too. It was number 45. But Tom Sawyer especially, that's such an iconic song for them, just 4 notches away from hitting the top 40. I think that's a literal miss, but that's the one that the band, there's obviously nothing they could have done about that.
Yeah.
I think that goes along with the idea that they didn't market it right. I mean, back then they were more like, I mean, you just said Tom Sawyer was on the pop chart. Like, well, that's a rock song. And I mean, the band back then was closer to like Genesis and Pink Floyd than they were to like, Van Halen or Journey.
What I'm saying is with the pop chart, pop, I take it in the meaning to mean popular. It's like It was so good and so many people latched onto it. It didn't matter that it was a little heavier than the normal stuff that even rock bands that got played on AM radio. It was just that good. And it's just, they came, and a lot of people think, well, they didn't do very well in the singles charts if you're just looking at the top 40 stats. But no, they garnered significant airplay. It's just too bad they didn't have that little stat to show, yeah, it did crack it. Does it matter? Ultimately, no. But that's the only other thing I could think of that was a miss.
Yeah. Yeah, literal miss. Yeah. Good one. Cool. All right. For my third, it goes back to the fade outs. And I was hoping none of you would say this because this is my third, and this is my biggest, from a personal perspective, what I think is their biggest miss. And that is the fade out solo on Mission. I think that some songs fade outs are fine. I mean, like I would argue that I didn't say anything because I wanted to say it now, like with different strings. I kind of like how that fades out. Like, yeah, it would be cool to see that, live and see how it would have been done live or whatever. Mission, you get that. And A Show of Hands and Snakes and Arrows come to mind. The fade out solo on Mission is not a fade out solo. they let Alex just top to bottom just finish that solo. And let Alex, you know what I mean? Alex just goes ahead and does that. But I just feel like this is one of his most heartfelt, emotional, just beautiful solos. And it feels like it was just, I don't want to say a throwaway just at the end of that song, but it just feels like this solo in this song really needed to not be a fade out, because I think if we hear it from top to bottom in the studio, people would consider it one of his best, because I think it's just that damn good. So yeah, I really wish that Mission fade out solo was not a fade out solo, and I think that was a huge miss. Thoughts?
Thank goodness we got the show of hands version right after that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how it should have went.
Yeah, right.
I agree with that. I mean, I think of the ending the marathon on a show of hands.
Yeah.
And I think about how great like the last like 20 seconds sounds. And sometimes I get that mixed up with the end of Mission, but Mission doesn't have an end on the recorded version. So
right.
I can see what you're saying.
All right, number 3, Paul.
For me, number 3 is overall sound quality on certain albums. I know Nick's nodding his head, but I think we might disagree on which albums we're thinking. I'm thinking more of the later albums. We all know about Vapor Trails, how the initial release was kind of like you went through a drive-through and it sounded muffled, but they acknowledged the mistake. They did a remix. Snakes and Arrows I find sounds really good, but Clockwork Angels, there's something with that album. I just can't. It sounds too. I like a clean, crisp sound, not too bassy, too muffled. And I find it's a mix. Like Neil's drums are kind of muffled a bit in the background, personally. Live albums, gosh, we can talk about that for hours, right? Quality of sound recording on live albums, but I don't know. Just some live, I don't know. But I'm sure you want to chime in, Nick. But what are your thoughts on the worst? Like, I don't want to say worst recorded, but it's not an easy job to mix and record and mix the sound on an album, right? So
I agree with you, because I think that my one issue with the Clockwork Angels live album is that it sounds too digital. Like
I mean, a lot of people will say that sound quality on like Presto and Roll the Bones are not very good, or that the the drums sound tinny or
Presto,
things like that.
My issue with Presto is that Chain Lightning, I really like that song, but Chain Lightning has I feel like if Chain Lightning would have been recorded in the way they recorded Counterparts, it would have been heavier. It would have been 1,000 times better. I really like that song. I wish I would have seen that live. I agree with you though, Paul. I think that they were trying to fix Geddy's vocals on Clockwork Angels personally, but
we've had this discussion.
So
I
was thinking that when you said that, that Nick was going to mention it could be.
And I agree with you that I wish that all their albums would have sounded similar to like Counterparts.
Yes.
And how clean it was. Counterparts and somewhere between Counterpart, like not the albums between, but a mix between Counterparts and like Power Windows. To me, those two albums, I love the recording on those two albums. Like the recording quality of A Farewell to Kings on some songs, Close to the Heart I mentioned, and then Vapor Trails and even Clockwork Angels to an extent, just not there. So
I think it reflects in the different producers they had over the years, right?
Yeah,
Because if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that, but I think they had the same producer for Presto and Roll the Bones, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe so.
Rupert Hine. Yeah,
it was Rupert Hine. Yeah, so I'm assuming his influence was in those recordings, right?
Yeah.
Because then Counterparts was a completely different direction. I find they kind of You know, like Ryan said previously, they went back to their nuts and bolts, right back to their roots, and just a different sound, just more raw, more power to it, right? So
All right, Pat, number 3.
All right, so this isn't something that I'm just gonna go generally speaking. Geddy Lee's raccoon hairstyle.
Wow, that's a miss. I thought that was like a greatest hit.
Well, that
He himself has said that was a miss. He said he has no idea what he was thinking.
A
I've also heard him
greatest, a
talk
greatest,
about the glasses that he used to wear. He said they were eating my face.
a greatest hit, as in a raccoon was hit by a car and he put it on his head. All right, go ahead. That's
that was the 80s.
That's it. You're okay.
I agree with you, Pat. I think there's a bigger thing with that too, is that like, you know, the band talked about how with like the kimonos and everything early on, like the way they dressed, they hated that because they just want to go out in jeans and a t-shirt. Honestly, this goes back to my whole marketing thing. I think they would have had a little bit more, just a little smidge of more success, more popularity if they had just been themselves and worn jeans and a t-shirt. Like, think about all those 70s bands, like what they used to look like when you watch them in concerts and stuff. They just wear jeans and t-shirts at like the rock festivals and stuff. Like, they should have just done that. Like, you see Geddy with his like scarf thing in the 70s and his shirt unbuttoned, all awkward, and Alex has a little like, and these guys just want to wear jeans and a t-shirt. They should have done it.
That's
I
fair.
feel like more female-ish. Oh well.
All right. Well, Nick, I have an idea of what your number 3 is going to be, but why don't you go ahead?
So I have 2 others that I would rather talk about, but Ryan really wanted me to come on this episode because he really wanted me to address why I think that Superconductor is just garbage. So I will address why I think Superconductor is garbage.
I'm kind of curious to know this now.
Okay, so first off, all right. For people,
All right, I'm setting a timer. You got 5 minutes to talk about.
Okay, first off, I've heard people describe Superconductor as like a fun, poppy, like dance song. I never want to hear the words fun and poppy associated with a prog rock power trio ever. I hate that. If I want pop music, I can literally just walk outside and listen to any regular person walking down the street, any person's car. Okay. I think the lyrics suck. I think they're some of the weakest that Neil's ever written. I think that the music. So this is a band that's written La Villa Strangiato. This is a band that wrote, you know, the Manhattan Project and all their all their other great instrumentals, and you know, Limelight and their long pieces, even like the Necromancer, which I would put ahead of Superconductor. Like Superconductor sound. I mean, even the name is stupid. Superconductor. It sounds dumb. Like it's just a dumb name. It sounds like a 12-year-old song. Not even. It sounds like a 10-year-old song. Okay. You ever see 2.5 Men? Dumb show from the late 2000s. Okay. One of the episodes, Charlie Sheen is trying to write a jingle for a kids Saturday cartoon show. On God, it sounds like Superconductor. And that's every time I hear Superconductor, that's what I think is those terrible 90s morning cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. That's what I think of with Superconductor, is that's what that song sounds like to me. And I'm sorry, but this band, they're like these incredible musicians. There's no way they made that song. They can't. That song is an instant skip for me every time, even on that album, because that's a really good album. You know, up until 2 years ago, it was like my least favorite album. I'd put that album in my top 10 right now. I'd put it right in my top 10 now. I love so many songs in that. Warpaint, Available Light, Anagram, Presto, even though it doesn't really fit on the album itself, but Presto, just so many songs. But yeah, that song is just awful. Like, it's just so bad.
You know what? Maybe it's
Tell us how
imposters.
you really feel.
Maybe it's imposters that wrote that song. And the theory is that the music video, if you've seen the music video to Superconductor, Getty is on the left and Alex is on the right.
Oh,
It was
I-
backwards. Yeah.
I don't believe they made that song. I can't believe they did. I can't believe they made that song.
Well, we finally got the explanation.
yeah, finally. Wow. It makes sense
But-
now.
Wait.
So
I think Tim's playing it over there. I don't think we heard it. Everyone, shh.
Well,
There we go.
Which kind of serves to Nick's point. If I can figure out how to play this on the ukulele bass, anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
We can wrap up there. Other than Superconductor, which I asked Nick to have in his list here, to finally get it. This is the episode to have that explanation. In all seriousness, but nobody named one song, like just the song was a miss or the album was a miss, and I think that is, I think that just goes to show just how damn good Rush is. Nobody said, oh, Tai Shan was one of their greatest misses, or, The Necromancer was a greatest miss, or Dog Years was a greatest miss, right? Nobody, or BU2B2, some of these songs that are not popular, nobody said that was a miss. So I'm interested to see what, Nick?
Well, Ryan, I was just going to say, like, all the stuff you just answered, like, as fans, we know why we wouldn't count those as misses. The first album, that didn't even have Neil on it. That was with John, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, John Ruzzi on it. And, and like,
I mean,
so we forgive them for that. There are many of us who actually like the Necromancer, and it led to later stuff. You can hear parts of that song in later songs. BU2B2, first off, most of us forget about it. And then also it was part of the album. So I think that's why we didn't name songs, is because unless you genuinely dislike, heck, I don't like Superconductor, but the reality is it's hard to call it a miss when it's just it's basically just a song they threw on a later album. Like, it's hard to call that necessarily a miss. A miss is like, I think that's why they didn't.
It would have been a bigger.
So
You're thinking it would have been a bigger miss if it had been this huge hit that everybody knew them for, and it's like a song that you really don't like.
Right.
I mean, but all right, still, people say they absolutely hate Caress of Steel, or they hate albums as wholes, and people say, Tai Shan was such a huge miss, or even diehard Rush fans still think that. But I think, none of us naming that, I think, just goes to show that, even some of the unpopular songs are still good songs to us. I'm interested to hear. I'm hopeful that fans that have watched to this point in this video will comment on this video and let us know what they think are some of Rush's greatest misses, whether they be songs, albums, parts of songs, anything that, anything we piggyback on what we said. I do want to read one thing here, though. This was an interview with Alex, Classic Rock Magazine, November 2013. He was asked, what to you are the worst songs that Rush ever recorded? And his reply was, Tai Shan from 1987's Hold Your Fire is one of the worst, easily, and Panacea, part of the epic of the Fountain of Lamneth from 1975's Caress of Steel. It was an attempt at something that didn't really work out. It was innocent. So that's right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But I'm interested to see what other folks, think are greatest misses. I mean, I'm sure all of us have a whole bunch of honorable mentions. I advise, if you do, leave it in the comments. We'll continue with our followers. And we will see you next week on Rush Roundtable. Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.